Welcome everyone. My name is Anne Crane, and this talk is called Testaments for Toddlers, Incorporating the Sunday Gospel into the Early Childhood Classroom. Today we're going to be learning why it's important to bring the gospel into an early childhood classroom, how to utilize strategies to teach the gospel in a concise and age-appropriate way, how to use quality children's literature to reinforce gospel meanings and themes, and how to incorporate whole body learning, music, dramatic play, and use of manipulatives to communicate the gospel message. I imagine that those of you watching this recording are teachers or paras yourselves, or are administrators in faith formation in Catholic schools and parish settings. Welcome to all, and thank you sincerely for the important work you do to bring the stories and love of Jesus into the hearts of our littlest learners. So as I said, my name is Anne Crane. I'm from New Hampshire, but I've worked in pre-K for 12 years, 2 years in a parish setting, and 10 years as a teacher. I have my master's in divinity as well as my master's in early childhood education from Boston College. I currently work at a Catholic school in Boston, and I teach in what is the 2.9 classroom, the 2 years, 9 months classroom. And I love this age group, but I've taught all of the range from early childhood all the way up through 5 years old. We're lucky to have a Catholic identity committee at my school, and I do chair that, so that goes all the way up through 8th grade. So I run a lot of the liturgical events at our school and handle a lot of those questions that come from the upper grades. So all the more important to start early to build some of that faith formation up from an early age. And I also do a family formation program through Boston College on Sunday mornings, which breaks down the Sunday gospel for parents and for kids. And so that's something I'm really passionate about, is incorporating those Jesus stories in a way that children can understand and in a way that's relevant for children even as young as 2.9. As a teacher, I have sat through many professional developments. Some were good and some were terrible. But the ones that I liked the most were the ones that gave me practical things that I could do tomorrow. Practical things that I could start doing in my classroom as soon as I got back in, and things that made me feel excited to get back in the classroom and try something new. And I know that as teachers, we've got a lot of stuff to do. So I'm going to try to make this as practical as possible. So if you want to pause your video for a second here and get a notebook and maybe something to write with, this will be a good time to do it, because my hope is that you'll find at least a couple of things that you can try soon, and you can just jot them down as they come up for you. And, you know, because I really want you guys to be able to try this tomorrow. Or if you're on spring break, enjoy your spring break. And then when you come back, start these up. So go ahead and grab a pencil and a piece of paper and we'll get started. So let's get to the why. Why teach the gospel in an early childhood classroom? I can't tell you the number of people who have been surprised or nervous about the fact that I teach the gospel in my classroom. These stories and lessons are too complicated for little ones. It'll go over their heads. You know what, I'm just gonna stick with Christmas and Easter, and then I won't really get into Easter too much, just like stick to the eggs, you know? You don't wanna confuse kids. You don't wanna teach it wrong or scare them. You know, I've heard it all, but I believe that that's a misunderstanding that can lead to a missed opportunity. In my classroom, we're not gonna be breaking down transubstantiation for the kids, but children have a wonderful understanding of the bigness and mysteriousness of the world and can appreciate the idea of God better than adults often. Early childhood is the perfect opportunity to introduce them to the concept of God and God's connection to us and to the world. And sharing the gospel stories are a wonderful way of achieving that. Now, I love Sunday Mass, but let's face it, an average 3-year-old, it's going right over their heads. They're not going to be paying attention, and they might miss most of the important points. So the hope is that families would be the first teachers of the gospel stories at home, but many families feel intimidated sharing this subject matter with their children. So what do? We approach it in the classroom, and that's such a great opportunity and a gift. Because we are doing this in a classroom, we have this great opportunity to expose children to the gospel and truly break it open in a way that meets their needs and understandings and make it meaningful for them. We can also incorporate it and connect it to the ways we are already teaching religion in our classroom, whether we're using a scripted curriculum or not. This not only prepares them to pay attention in Mass on Sunday, but allows them to experience the richness of the gospel and how it can affect their own lives where they are. And you don't have to have a degree in theology to start this ball rolling. Which brings us to our next point, strategies. So the first strategy that we're going to talk about is knowing what the gospel is. I know that this sounds very basic, but this is a very important step, and you can't assume that all Catholic school teachers are Catholic, or that even mass-going every Sunday Catholics are going to know where to find what the upcoming gospel is. So just as a tip, I usually start by looking at the USCCB daily readings, find that Sunday's gospel, and think through what the theme of the gospel might be. This might be Googling homilies on that subject, or just looking at other children's versions of the gospel. And that way you kind of can draw out, what do you want your children to take from this gospel? I like to do this over the weekend or on Friday so that I can set my classroom all up and do this on Monday. So that way that whole week we're working on that gospel. For kids' gospels, I would look at the 4catholiceducators.com, Seeds, which is a weekly gospel program, Sadly or Connect website. Under this week's liturgy, you can click and get a lesson plan even for that gospel. And there are probably other great apps, great children's Bibles out there. So whatever works for you. Once you have your theme, you're going to set up your prayer table and get ready for your week at school. Our second strategy is going to be finding the time to do it. So let's talk about where you're going to put yet another lesson into your already very packed day, where you might be using multiple curriculums, and you might already have a religion curriculum. So sharing the gospel doesn't have to be a drawn-out event, and we know that students have a very short attention span in these age groups, so it's great to do it quickly, maybe during your Monday morning meeting, or potentially during your regularly scheduled religion class. It's usually pretty easy to connect the gospel theme to at least something that you're already learning about in religion. For example, our kindergarten uses the We Believe, Sadly, program, and this book is very adaptable, where you can just drop other stuff in or incorporate it in with your regular literacy or math curriculum. So that is super helpful. I think a lot of early childhood programs and curriculums for religious education are very adaptable in this way, so that's where we get some flexibility with time. It would be easy to begin the lesson with a gospel story and then move right into your religion lesson. For example, if the gospel story was Jesus calming the storm, and your religion lesson for the week is that friends are gifts from God, you could begin by reading that story and then sharing about how Jesus was a good friend to the disciples. Then you could go into your regular religion lesson, tying them both together. Another way you could fit this breaking open of the gospel into your regularly scheduled activity is to put it in your morning meeting. So what I do is on each Monday, I begin the morning meeting with the gospel message to set the tone for the week. And you can keep revisiting that mission for the rest of the week. I usually start with a prayer or a ritual to get them started. You can have a prayer that your students already know and love, a song that brings them into that spirit of listening to the gospel, or I've had years where I've had the students take their shoes off before they enter that space. This was pre-COVID, but we took our shoes off and came in because we knew we were going to be walking on holy ground. And so it's just, you can dim the lights, even light a candle if your school isn't from 1901 like mine, but whatever works for you to set the mood in your classroom and make sure that the children know that this is a special time. And then I always have the students stand for the gospel because we stand at church when we hear the gospel, and we get ready. Let them know that we stand because we're getting ready to move. We're getting ready to hear that gospel mission that Jesus is sending us on. And so we have to be standing because we've got to be on our feet, ready to move and do whatever Jesus is sending us on this mission to do. So that is the way that I usually incorporate it into my Monday morning meetings. My next and number one strategy is to make a prayer table or a prayer area in your classroom. This is going to be your classroom's prayer chapel. This is your prayer space. This is the space where the students know that they can go to feel peaceful, to calm down, to pray, and to visit symbols of God. And so this is a super important thing. I know that a lot of you probably are already doing this in your classroom, but it's something that's always there. It's not just there for the religion lesson, it's always there because God is always present with us. And I use this to display several different faith objects, but also something about the gospel that gives the kids a hint, a clue as to what that gospel mission is for the week. So with each new week, I put different things on the table. So the students will look forward to seeing the new items on the table every Monday, and they'll start looking at the clues to see what the mission is that Jesus is sending us on this week. So I just wanted to show you an example of a prayer table. This is the prayer table in my actual classroom. I put my prayer table down low, which is right at the height. The way I'm sitting is exactly the height of one of my children. And so this is right where they can see it. So they come in the morning on that Monday morning, and one of their first jobs that they have to do in the classroom is they have to sign in. This is our sign-in sheet. And so when they're waiting in line to sign their name, this is the first thing that catches their attention. So I know, especially when we have new stuff on the table, it is very exciting. So what we have here, we've got a bunch of little boats. We've got the felt board that has this beautiful boat with the disciples on it, and Jesus is standing in the boat. We've got our sunny, which is from our weather chart. The kids are going to know and recognize that sunny picture, even though they cannot read, but they know that that is our sunny from our weather chart and that it refers to weather. And then I have also frightened from our feelings chart, another item from the classroom that they are very familiar with, and they're going to be excited to know, what does this have to do with the gospel? And so I have that up there. So the students are going to know that the story we're going to listen to is going to look like this. It's going to involve feeling frightened, and it's going to involve sunshine at some point. I also have the Bible open to that story, which is always a nice reference point, and sometimes throughout the week I will turn the page so they can see the different parts of the story. And I also have our scaffolding reading. So this is a storybook, One Dark Night by Hazel Hutchins, which is a book about a family of cats that gets caught in a thunderstorm, and they feel very afraid, and a little boy helps them. And so it's a great way of tying in those feelings of fear, and this is actually part of one of our literacy units. And so it's a great tie-in to the gospel. And it's a story that the kids are already familiar with. Some items that I always keep on the prayer table at all times. I've got rosaries. They are big rosaries. They are wooden rosaries, and it's very hard for them to break. They make sounds. It's really fun for the kids to touch them. It's great to have a religious object like this in your classroom. Something that's like, hey, I might have something like this at my house. My mom has these. And so it's a really nice familiar object for the kids to touch. I also have a cross. And some people say, like, well, don't the kids ask a lot of questions about a crucifix in your classroom? You know, a man on a cross is hard for a 3-year-old to understand. What I notice with my students is that the thing that they notice is that he's not wearing a shirt, and that's not appropriate for school. That is the thing that 3-year-olds notice about this. And so I like to have them get familiar with this symbol, and familiar that when we see this symbol, we think about how much God loves us. And that is what we always talk about when we see the crucifix. Another cross that I have is this one. This has the Holy Family on it. They love Mary. They know that they have a family and that they were a baby. And so they love to know that Jesus was a part of a family. So this is always there. This is also a real durable cross. So they like to hold this when they are feeling upset. Sometimes I'll send them here to have a quiet moment. I'll say, you know what? Your body seems out of control. Why don't you walk over to the prayer table and reflect? I also have this little statue of Mary that is a really great... You just sort of run your finger around the labyrinth. It's a nice little worry stone for students to use. I find this very helpful. Again, really durable. They can't break it. So this is just my example of a prayer table. And I change it out every week. So it's a little bit more work, but you just sort of leave it here for the whole week. And that is a very exciting thing for the kids. And I can't even tell you the amount that it helps them to understand and connect with the gospel throughout the week. Another thing I use, and you saw it on my prayer table, but I use it a lot, especially when I'm reading the gospel to the children, is my felt board. So if you don't have a felt board in your classroom and you're an early childhood teacher, I highly recommend getting a felt board. These are invaluable tools. The way you can use the manipulatives to make stories is amazing. Kids find them magical. I love it. My classroom is pretty screen free, so it's like having a screen to the kids, and they love it. If you don't have the budget to buy a felt board, it's very easy to make. You can just cut out a piece of cardboard, hot glue, felt, and you've got yourself a felt board. It's pretty amazing. But you might be saying, you know, there were some really cool Bible pictures on your felt board. That's true. I ordered a set of Bible story felt boards from the internet. Couldn't tell you the company, don't remember. But I can tell you that you can easily print out any pictures from the internet, cut them out, glue felt to the back of those pictures, and then they stick to the felt board. As long as they are backed with felt, or even if you back them with construction paper, they will stick to a felt board. And then you make these marvelous stories for children come to life. So I often use my felt board for sharing the Bible stories, especially when I can't find a good illustrated Bible version. And so I'll put it on my felt table, my prayer table, and then I'll move it to morning meeting prayer area when it's time to share the gospel. And as I tell the story, I'll show the children the Bible so they know where the story is coming from. But I tell the story using the moving parts of the felt board. So as I tell the stories, I will move the characters. And then later, I'll put the felt board out on a small group center during center time and let the kids retell the story. This builds literacy. It can actually be used as a literacy center, and you can tie it into your literacy storytelling curriculum. And I just put it on a table, and the kids love it. They love to, it's like playing dollhouse for them. And they love to put together the story and remember the different parts and play the different people. So if you don't have a felt board, I highly recommend getting a felt board to tell your gospel stories. Okay, I just wanted to give you an example of how I tell a felt board story. So I would take the felt board from the prayer table where it usually lives, and then I would bring it to the front and we would do our normal ritual, whatever that might be. We might we could sing the gospel song, "Your word, O Lord, be in our minds and on our lips and in our hearts." Super easy. Nice and easy. And we would stand to hear the gospel, and then I would say, okay, get ready. Here comes the gospel story. We've got to listen for whatever that mission is. And then I take everything off. We start with blank. And the kids get so excited because they've been looking at this story and they don't know what it's going to be about. It does not take place in the water. In this story, there is a tree. And in this story, there is a man named Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus lived in a town called Jericho. Zacchaeus was very small. Some of you might know what that's like. Very short. He was a short little man. And his job was being a tax collector. Now, he lived in this town with many other people. And he did things that were unfair and very poor choices. He would go to them and he would take the money that he was supposed to collect for the government, but then he would take more than he was supposed to. And he would keep it for himself. And he would say, give me your money, give me your money, give me your money, give me your money. Not a very kind choice. This is his house. Now, one day, Jesus came. We love Jesus. And everybody in Jericho loved Jesus too. They were so excited. Jesus is coming to our town. Oh my gosh, they're so excited. And so they ran out to see Jesus because they knew Jesus was so wonderful. He made the best choices. He always was kind. He helped others so much. They were very excited to have him in their community. And so he came and he started to teach, and they were listening and listening to Jesus. They couldn't wait to hear what he had to say. Now, Zacchaeus, you remember, he was very small. So do you think he could see over everybody to see Jesus? No. So you know what he did? He climbed the tree. He climbed up the tree. And there he could see Jesus and listen to Jesus. And as he listened to Jesus, his heart became so full of love. And he realized from what Jesus was saying that he should be kind to others just like Jesus. He wanted to do the right thing. And so he thought, oh no, I've really been making poor choices. But now what am I going to do? And as he's thinking these thoughts, Jesus looks up into the tree and he says, Zacchaeus. How do you think Zacchaeus felt? He knew his name. He felt kind of nervous, kind of excited, kind of special. He says, yes. And Jesus says, I want to come have lunch at your house. Come down from that tree. I want to have lunch with you. And so Zacchaeus came down out of the tree and he went right home. He was so excited to have lunch with Jesus. He couldn't believe it. Jesus wanted to have lunch with him. But all these people were starting to grumble. They were thinking, oh my goodness, Jesus wants to have lunch with this guy who took our money? Jesus wants to have lunch with this guy who made such poor choices? Jesus, why do you want to have lunch with Zacchaeus? And Jesus said, you know what? I want to have lunch with Zacchaeus because I love Zacchaeus. And I know that Zacchaeus made mistakes. But I want to talk to Zacchaeus because I bet he wants to change. And I can help him. Because I love him so much that I can forgive him and let him know that he's loved. And then he'll stop making poor choices. And so he goes in, and they have a very nice lunch. And then they say goodbye, and Jesus heads home. And then Zacchaeus comes out of his house, and what do you think he did? Well, I think some of you might have guessed right. He went and he gave back the money, but he also gave them back more than what he took. He gave them back even more money. And he decided right then that he wanted to be like Jesus. He wanted to fix his mistakes and become the best person that he can be. He wanted to be like Jesus. So I think our mission this week is to think about the different ways that we might be hurtful to other people and to work hard to change our ways. Come down out of that tree and let our hearts be changed by Jesus. So that is my felt board story. And I would put this, after I told the story, I would put this out as a small group center. And then the students, they have a blast. This is a very competitive center to be at. Everybody wants this center. And then they retell the story themselves and they love to do the voices. So this is just a great thing to have in your classroom. Another very important strategy that I use in early childhood classrooms is children's literature. And if you have ever been in an early childhood classroom, you know how valuable these good children's literature is. There are amazing stories. Children's books they were wonderful when I was a kid, and they're still wonderful, and they're coming out with more and more incredible books all the time. And many of these themes from these children's books are social emotional skill building, are problem solving, and are just fascinating stories of people who did important things. And so it's great to find stories that tie in with your gospel message, with your mission that you're going on. And so these are a great structure to scaffold your gospel on. So, if on Monday you're reading the gospel story, and then you have a children's book that ties into it on Tuesday, you can remind the children and say, well, I noticed in that book they were really showing great friendship, and they really helped each other not be afraid. Then you could say, that makes me think of when we learned that gospel story about how Jesus helped his friends not feel afraid. So I'm thinking that maybe our mission is to help each other not feel afraid and to remember that God is always keeping us safe. And so you can use that children's literature to really build on the children's understanding. And we know as preschool teachers how amazing children's books can be to help inspire kids' learning. And so you probably already know the children's books you might want to learn to cover certain themes. I mean, right now, you can even write this down on your piece of paper. Can you think of 3 early childhood books that would be great for the theme of forgiveness? Yeah. Social justice, helping, looking out for others, Advent, hopefulness. These are all things that you're thinking in your brain like, oh, there's so many wonderful children's books, and they're not necessarily religious children's books, but they share those common themes. So I think that it's so important to build on a child's understanding of what could be a complicated gospel story and bring it to their level with children's literature and children's characters. So I just wanted to show you a few of the children's books that I use in my classroom to bring together children's literature and gospel messages. So all of these books I find share a theme with a gospel message. These are all wonderful books. If you are a teacher, I highly recommend getting these books. If you're an administrator, give these books to your teachers or give them the funding to get these books or request them or write a grant, because these books are so great and it's so important to have quality children's literature that can scaffold the gospel message in your classroom. So here we go. Love You Forever. You probably already have this book in your classroom. It is an amazing classic. This is a great book to use for forgiveness, teaching reconciliation, teaching what it means to be sorry. Swimmy, Leo Leone. This is a great book about leadership and working together. Be Kind. This is a great one to use with stories like the Good Samaritan about helping others. What Can a Citizen Do? This book is by Dave Eggers, and it's excellent. It is a great book. Kids get really into it, and it's about building a better tomorrow. So if you can imagine all of the different social justice related things that it could go with in gospel messages. Lost and Found by Oliver Jeffers. Oliver Jeffers has a lot of books that can go along with gospel themes. I love this one, and it's great. It's really about feeling known and loved and how God can know and love us. The Dot by Peter Reynolds. This is a very popular book. It's also really cheap on Scholastic. So this is great when you're going over themes like God made you special and you have gifts that God has given you. All Are Welcome. This is a pretty new book. It's great. We use this in our curriculum now. This is a book just about being welcome at school, and you can really compare that feeling when you feel welcome at school. You understand what feeling welcome is, and then you can kind of turn that around with a gospel message. We are all welcomed by God. We are welcomed in God's kingdom, and we are called to welcome others. This is one of my favorite books. I love it so much. It's called The Rabbit Listened. It is also very new. This is a great book to describe how God listens to us. Everybody has this book. It's called The Rainbow Fish. To be honest with you, I don't know how I feel about this book, but the kids love it. And it's a great book to talk about friendship, to talk about kindness, and to talk about giving what you have. There are so many gospel stories that talk about giving as much as you can. Rainbow Fish. I don't know how I feel about it. All right. This is another new one. It's a great book. Smallest Girl in Smallest Grade. Anything with social justice, anything with listening to others and standing up for others. Excellent book. The Carrot Seed, an oldie but a goodie. It is the shortest book in the world. Hope, faith, Advent, even Lent. Wait and it will grow. Speak Up. This is a great book. This is great. I used it recently for Jesus being angry at the temple. So social justice issues, speaking up for others, kindness in general. This is another one. You have it. You like it. You don't love reading it out loud. Or you do. I don't know. Depends on how fun you are. Knuffle Bunny or Nuffle Bunny by Mo Willems. Great to use with the lost sheep. Also, just in general, gospel stories about feeling lost. God will always seek you out. Sally's Room. This is an older book, but it's great for Lent. It's Lent when I'm recording this right now, so we're using this right now. Cleaning out your heart, cleaning up your room. And then it is spring, Easter, patience, hope. The Tale of the Three Trees. Buy this book. Buy it. Buy it. If you're an administrator, buy it. It's perfect. Advent, Easter, both. Repeat the story. I love it. Sometimes I just leave this on my prayer table. I love this book. Perfect Square. Great book to use if you've got an introspective class, which some years you know you do. Great book about forgiveness and brokenness. When you feel broken, when you feel like you're not good enough, that's when God puts us back together in a really beautiful way. Reconciliation, it's beautiful. Oh no, knocking my books over. Pout Pout Fish and the Big Big Dark. All the Pout Pout Fish books are good. This is my favorite one. It's darkness and light. Any themes with that? I am using this for Jesus calming the storm. Friends help friends be not afraid of the dark. Friends help friends get through something difficult. Pout Pout Fish. Great. And bonus, if you are like my school and we are still dealing with the after effect of COVID-19 and masking, there's some great gospel connections there that kids are really feeling right now. if you're masking, if you're not masking, if you're transitioning in and out of that. These are two excellent books that I found that have been really helpful in my classroom. This is And the People Stayed Home, great book about COVID, community, and hope. This book, Outside Inside, also about COVID. Beautiful pictures that are really visceral for kids. They really like this book a lot. Great Easter message. It's that message of like, you know, there are some really hard things and we get through and spring is coming. Beautiful book. So just a few of the many, many books, and I'm sure you have a million more. Please email me. At the end of this, I'll give you my email address. Email me, tell me the books that you like. The final strategy that I want to look at is whole body learning for kids. Now, if you've been in an early childhood classroom, you know they never stop moving. They love to touch everything. And they love to ask questions and sing and dance. And so it's so great to have the gospel be meaningful to them with whole body learning. So that means singing, that means dramatic play, that means writing if they're able to, and that also means moving the manipulatives. So some of the manipulatives that I use are things like that I would put out on my prayer table. Some things that I would put out might be stuffed animals. Like if we're doing the lost sheep, I might put out a sheep. I might put out a paddock. I might have them act out that story. Dramatic play is another great way to do this. Every year I have my students act out the nativity. We don't do it for anybody. We don't do it like a show for the parents, but I have them dress up and they take turns playing the different characters. And I have students come back to me years later and say, I was Mary in your nativity, or like, I was the sheep and I loved it. Remember when I was the sheep? And these stories stay with them. And it's so amazing to me how much more impactful the stories are when the kids get to be in the stories. And so even with a challenging gospel, I would say try to find a way to allow the students to act those stories out. So it might be you very involved, or to take a short part of it and shorten the gospel to make it just a couple of lines back and forth that the students can do. But it will help. And I will say, if you have costumes, this can be blankets, drape a blanket over, or, you know, have a cape and a crown, things that you would normally find in your dramatic play, and have the students use those to act these things out. And I would say songs. We all know in early childhood classrooms, songs are big. I have an arsenal of songs locked away, but I also make up songs a lot. They sound crazy. I don't always do a great job singing them, but the kids love them. And so you can usually find something on YouTube or something from your own kindergarten or early childhood experience that you remember a song about this gospel theme. So I highly encourage you to check out some of those songs that are available for early childhood, or make up your own. I also encourage you to use things around your classroom that you wouldn't normally to involve that whole body learning. So if you can involve dancing, that's amazing. Make up some hand motions that go along with a prayer. We do a lot of prayers that are like, you know, we do like Christ before us, Christ beneath us, Christ beside us, Christ above us. Because when you make it whole body, kids learn it so much more effectively. We also have a telephone in our classroom. I pick that phone up so much, and I encourage the kids to pick it up too. We call it the God phone. That's where you can go and you can pray. Go talk to God on the phone. And and you know how you dial God's phone number? Boop, 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 boop. The kids love that. And it's a helpful tool for a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old to understand what prayer is, because it's new to them. So they're just learning that God is someone that they can talk to. God is someone that they can confess to or thank or tell their feelings to. And it's such an important practice to get started. And that's how we can get the gospel really in their hearts, even in this young age. I wanted to show you one example that I love to do. I do it every year. It's an example of movement-based play. And so I needed the help of my little sheep. This is a Beanie Baby. I don't know if you remember the 90s. I sure do. And so that's where I got this sheep. But you can just order a little stuffed sheep online. They're very cheap. Again, if you're an administrator, buy a sheep for your teachers. They need a sheep. And so I will introduce this sheep maybe a couple of weeks before I want to use it. I will bring the sheep out. The sheep will help me read stories. The sheep will just sit on the prayer table a lot of the time. And we know that the prayer table is the sheep's place. I usually have the students name the sheep. The sheep's name is Mike. So Mike the sheep is our friend, is our pet. We love Mike. The kids love to play with Mike. We get really attached. And then one day, when I'm reading a certain story about a good shepherd, I do a little handoff. We talk about Mike a little bit. We'll say hi to him. And then I do a very subtle handoff to my paraprofessional who hides Mike somewhere in the classroom, somewhere down low where the kids can see him. And then midway while I'm telling my story, I realize that Mike's gone. And I point out to the kids, I think Mike is gone. Mike knows he is not supposed to leave the prayer table without permission. And Mike knows that it's not safe to be somewhere else without a teacher. And so the kids start getting worried. This is a sincere worry. This is 3-year-old worry. And they're very nervous. And so they start looking around the classroom. They're looking around. And I say, we have to find Mike. Sometimes I give every kid a flashlight. And we look for Mike with flashlights. Sometimes I give them magnifying glasses because it's cute. And so we walk all around the classroom, searching high and low for Mike. When the student who finds Mike screams with joy, we found Mike, I go over and I say, well, I'm so glad you found Mike. Should I yell at Mike? Mike knew the right thing to do and he didn't do it. Should I scream at Mike and be so angry at Mike? And they say, no. Mike, we love Mike. Don't yell at Mike. They love Mike. No, please don't yell at Mike. He didn't mean to. He made a mistake. It was an accident. He wandered away. And I say, okay, what should I do then? And they tell me. Every year, it's the same. Just give him a hug. He was probably scared. He was by himself. Tell him in a kind voice to not do that again. So we do that. We come back together. We finish the story of the Good Shepherd. And then the kids usually make the connection on their own. Wow, that shepherd was kind of like what we were. Went out looking for the lost sheep. Didn't get mad or angry at the sheep, even though the sheep made a poor choice. You know what? God is kind of like that shepherd, right? God forgives us. We know the right thing to do, and sometimes we wander away. One more great thing that you can do to help scaffold the children's learning about the gospel is do a craft. Crafting is a huge part of early childhood, and so I would be remiss if I did not add this in as a way to scaffold learning about the gospel. So 2 quick crafts. One is there's a lot of references in the gospel to opening your eyes, learning to see, open the eyes of the blind man, also just like open the eyes of my heart, teach me to see. So this is a quick craft that I did to follow up with that. I had the students, I put a circle, had the students draw their own face. They did not do this, I did it. Just to let you know, my students aren't geniuses. But this is a face with closed eyes. And then when you open it, there are their eyes. If you have an art teacher, an art class is a great thing to recommend for them to do, to incorporate gospel learning in their art class. But if not, it's just a great way to have a teacher-student center to do something like this in a center. Super easy. Open the eyes. Students can bring this home. Nice way to connect home and school as well when you bring something like this home. One more thing. This is the Lent craft that we are currently doing. We are going to be through Lent, I think, when you're watching this. But this is my Lent craft. It is copied off of a thing I saw on Pinterest, but it's very simple. Lent craft, pray, fast, give, little pockets. You describe each one to the kids. What does it mean to pray? What does it mean to fast? What does it mean to give? And then you can have your teacher helper pick out, what are we going to pray for today? And then maybe at your morning meeting, you get to pray for it. Oh, pray for people without homes. That's what we're going to pray for today. Very exciting. What are we going to fast from today in our classroom? Oh, we're going to fast from tattling. Pretty important. In our classroom, that's what we're going to do for Lent. Oh, what are we going to give? We're going to give our time to help each other clean up. That's what we're going to do during Lent. So this is just a very easy little pocket thing that you can make as a fun craft. They can decorate it. They can put stickers on it. But crafting is a wonderful way to scaffold that learning for children. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I know it's virtual, but I do feel like educators are so connected, and I'm so excited to share my ideas with you today about sharing the gospel in your classroom. If you would like to contact me, I'm going to put my information at the bottom of the screen. Let me know if you do any of these activities. Let me know if you liked them. Let me know if you hated them and they didn't work. This is all good information to me. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your school year.